Good evening, and welcome to Legally Speaking with John Burrs. I'm Charles Bonner. I'm the guest host tonight for my dear friend John, who is out of town. We have an exciting program for you tonight. We're going to explore some different issues. Specifically, we will explore a topic of circumcision, the legal and constitutional implications of this particular surgical procedure. Many kids today are being injured by this procedure. They're suffering such injuries as permanent paralysis, permanent scarring, and even death. And we have a guest with us tonight, Mr. Stephen Svoboda, who will discuss this topic with us. Stephen is a Harvard-educated lawyer. He has written and spoken extensively on this topic. And in fact, he and I just had the fortunate opportunity to speak in Lausanne, Switzerland at the 4th International Symposium Against Genital Mutilation. Welcome to the program, Stephen.
Thank you, Charles. Pleasure to be here.
Very good. Before we get into this topic, I wanted to explore some general topics that are in the news tonight, specifically the death penalty. You may have heard the news today that a judge just sentenced Richard Allen Davis to the death penalty, to the death to the electric chair, the gas chambers. And Polly Klaas' father, Mark Klaas, apparently made a statement that he wanted to kill Richard Allen Davis. So I would throw the question out to you for your calls tonight as to whether or not there's any difference between Richard Allen Davis, the killer of Polly Klaas, and Mark Klaas, the father, who now wants to do the same thing to Richard Allen Davis that Richard Allen Davis did to his daughter. I throw that out because I'm mindful of Jesus' admonition against the Old Testament scripture of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, a point that Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King articulated so eloquently when he said that if we believe in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, that would leave all of us toothless and blind. So with that in mind, please call in. And now we'll get to the topic of the legal and constitutional issue of circumcision. Should you have your child circumcised? Is there any surgical benefit to that procedure? Stephen, talk to us about that. Are there any medical benefits to circumcision?
Charles, there aren't. Throughout history, this procedure has been used with a wide range of justifications, none of which has actually ever proven to be accurate. And in this day and age, it's basically kept going in the United States because of sort of social inertia. It happened in the past, and people believe that there must still be something to it, but the truth is there isn't.
What is circumcision? Could you explain to those of us who may not be familiar with this procedure? Is it done to boys and girls?
Well, the term is sometimes applied to both boys and girls. The operation is, of course, different because obviously the genitalia are different. In the case of boys, it involves quite an extensive procedure which takes away the foreskin and often the frenulum as well, which is a band that runs under the penis. And it does take away a significant portion of the sensitive tissue that boys are born with, more than 50% in most cases.
And what is the procedure as relate to girls?
Well, with girls, Charles, there's a wide range of procedures that are performed. The most extensive involves removing the clitoris and also doing what's called infibulation, which involves sewing up the woman's vagina so that she can only be opened at times when the husband is ready for her to have sexual intercourse. And it produces extreme pain. Most women, or many women who undergo it, have no ability to experience much sexual pleasure at all. It's a terribly drastic procedure.
Well, if there's no medical benefit and no medical necessity, why is this procedure being done to kids routinely?
That's a good question. A lot of it is culture, religion, traditions which date back, and people believe that therefore they're still justified today. We know that there's lots of traditions we don't do anymore. We don't chop off people's hands if they steal something. We don't make children...
At least not in this culture. I believe there's still some cultures that may still do that today,
yes,
like Saudi Arabia, some of those countries. But go on.
Right, but there's a lot of practices that we, as a world community, have done in the past that some of our countries are starting to discard as outdated, as
the Chinese used to bind the kids' feet or bind the females' feet, of those kinds of procedures?
Exactly, and that's a perfect example. The interesting thing about it is that it's very hard to see your culture objectively, so many of us may think circumcision of males is a totally valid and okay thing to do, but looking at it from the outside, as Europeans and people outside the U.S. are able to do, it's clear that it's unjustified and a very violent thing.
What are some of the injuries that you have seen as a result of this procedure?
Well, the complications can range up to death. They can involve severe scarring, destruction of a large portion of the penis. The penis can be curved so that the child who's forced to undergo this has great difficulty having any sexual activity in their life.
Is there risk of sexual dysfunctionality as a result of this?
Absolutely. In fact, I think probably most boys who undergo the operation as they grow up and become men have some effect on their sexual lives. This has been documented by studying men who were circumcised as adults.
What should parents do to educate themselves to this procedure?
Well, Charles, I think the first thing is to get informed. What happens in these cases is the parents are given very little information. The doctors these days tend to say more, this is done because this is done. The medical justifications in the past often aren't even mentioned because there aren't any, and many of the doctors know this. The parents need to get the information, find out, are there reasons for this? Are there reasons not to do it? Weigh the pros and the cons and decide what's in the best interest of their child.
Okay. Well, we're talking with Stephen Svoboda about the legal and constitutional issues of circumcision, and we would welcome your calls on this issue as well as any other issues that are in the news tonight. I would also mention that there is, of course, big news around the O.J. Simpson trial down in Santa Monica, virtually all-white community. The issue there is whether or not O.J. can get a fair trial, whether or not he will get an all-white jury. Apparently, some 10 to 12 African Americans have already been excluded from the jury pool after extensive questioning by the judge. So if you want to call in on that topic, by all means do so. Again, Stephen is very knowledgeable also about many legal topics, and we would welcome your call on the death penalty if you want to talk about that subject. And the whole notion of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I'm particularly disturbed about that concept because I see this continuing violence among our youth, where one person will harm a kid and that kid's friends will go out and get revenge. Recently in Richmond, I believe, on the Contra Costa County campus, City College campus, that is, the junior college campus in Contra Costa, a young man was gunned down, and apparently that's some kind of revenge that is going on there. This is that whole notion of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So we have some callers coming in. We will see if we can't take a call now. Good afternoon. Welcome to Legally Speaking. Good afternoon. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Well, actually, good evening.
Good evening. How you do, sir?
Very good. I would like to approach this subject of the mutilation of the genitalia.
Yes, please do so.
I would like to ask that your audience get a pencil and paper. I'd like to make them aware of a compendium by Barbara G. Walker, which will give a lot of information on how all of this came about.
Oh, right.
And I'll mention the name of the book and the author again.
Very good.
First of all, people understand that before the male found out that his sperm had anything to do with procreation, there were women in charge of this, of the world, basically in terms of religion, socioeconomics, especially in Africa, where African women control the socioeconomics of Africa, especially in the coastal areas.
Yes.
And the religions. And this is throughout Europe, where women also had to do with the religions. The religions of women were destroyed, they were turned around, and by violent force by men. And these different regulations, laws, and different reasonings for the genital mutilation came into effect.
I see, sir.
The woman's
Can you make it brief, sir, because we do have other calls coming in?
Well, the other callers won't have information like this.
Yes.
There were genital mutilations resulting from what man felt about woman. Not only was he wanting to restrict her pleasures of masturbation and for her involvement with other men,
Yes.
he also was afraid.
I see.
The woman's vagina was called the hell mouth in ancient times.
I see. Well, if that's, you were saying, explains the female genital mutilation. How do you...
I would move to the other areas as well, but hygiene had a lot to do with the male mutilation. Hygiene itself was...
Of course, there's no real basis in hygiene to take off part of a healthy functioning part of someone's body.
When a person doesn't clean themselves, bacteria will grow in a healthy environment of moisture and warmth underneath the foreskin and between the penile area itself.
Well, what do you... Go on, Stephen. Would you like to address that?
Sir, doctors have discussed this with me and informed me that anatomically the closest body part to the foreskin anatomically is the eyelid. I don't suppose you'd be in favor of amputating the eyelid because of the problem of cleaning that.
Well, I will admit to having been out on hunting excursions and going through the mountains and not being able to get to a shower and do things right and have bacteria to grow and have those problems. I don't know what your pH balance is, but I know mine.
Well, let me suggest this to you, sir. The counter-argument to that is that women have more folds and places for bacteria to grow than do males, and we don't advocate circumcising women in this culture.
While her vagina has a protection which will make it cleaner than the mouth. No.
So you suggest then because one cannot keep their ears, say, clean, that we should amputate the ears, or you can't keep your teeth clean, we should pull them out as a preventative measure?
Well, if you can't keep your ear clean, you'll wish you did, and you'll wish you could amputate it by the pain it'll be caused by the blockages.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate the comments. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
I can hear you now.
Very good. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Thank you. I just want to, I guess, kind of piggyback on pilot class.
Yes.
I can understand her father having an outburst like that.
Yes.
Because basically what I'm saying, I'm not advocating that, you know, because all the killing and stuff is going on, but the point is that you got to put yourself in the man's shoes that this daughter was killed, and that's really devastating, actually.
You're right, ma'am.
When he say he's gonna kill the man, this man gonna be killed anyway. So
Yes.
what difference does it make? What the man is part of the class. Father is very, very upset.
Do you think Richard Allen Davis should be killed because he killed Polly Klaas?
Absolutely, he should be hung.
Do you believe in Jesus?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that Jesus would advocate killing Richard Allen Davis?
Look, Jesus,
Yes.
fine. It's a forgiven man.
So you think that Jesus would not kill that Richard Allen Davis? Is that what you're saying?
I would say that.
Huh?
Yes.
In fact, what did Jesus say do when someone hits you?
Turn your other cheek.
That's right. So, but yet you worship Jesus, right?
Yes.
Then how can you reconcile your beliefs about killing someone in the death penalty when you believe in a man who didn't believe in that?
Okay, but at the same time, when you're up under stress, you don't think that way. I mean, you're human.
I see.
The machines break down. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. What do you feel about the death penalty? Is that a legitimate deterrent to crime? Do we have any statistics to show that that is a legitimate way of dealing with crime?
Well, Charles, in fact it isn't, and the United States is the only developed country at the moment, and probably indefinitely into the future, that allows the death penalty. That's a very disturbing fact, and I think what we have to think about is the fact that there have been a number of men throughout our country's history who have been killed, and then later evidence has been found that they were innocent. And society cannot apply this neutrally. It's going to be people who are the underprivileged. It's going to be, quite honestly, black people more than white people, and history has shown us this statistically. So it's dangerous for that reason. It's a very dangerous penalty.
So you're saying that it's very impossible, at least impracticable, to apply this evenly in the law, particularly the 14th Amendment said we are all equal under the law, but you're saying that you can't apply the death penalty equally, so therefore we should outlaw it.
That's correct. It will not be equal because society's pressures, society's inability to treat everybody on an equal footing just because of the way the law is applied is going to prevent that from being possible.
You made another interesting comment, Stephen. You said we are the only westernized society that has the death penalty?
That's correct. South Africa's eliminated it. They were the other one.
So you mean none of the countries in Europe,
No, sir.
Israel, now South Africa,
No, sir.
none of them have the death penalty?
That's correct.
But America, we have
We
it.
still do. America first.
Yes. Well, let's go to some more callers here. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Good evening.
Good evening,
I
ma'am.
mean no disrespect to your guests, but I think you need a doctor on there. I had 2 sons,
Yes.
and my doctor did explain why my children should be circumcised.
Uh-huh. What did
And
he
did
explain
say
to you?
for cleanliness.
Okay.
And if you ever, well, you're a man.
Yes.
you know about if you ever had to clean the penis,
Uh-huh.
and with that skin still attached,
Uh-huh.
like the caller before the man said, it does get a fungus. And when you use about the ear, that wasn't a good example.
Uh-huh.
In the opening, the penis is in the closed area, and it creates more heat. And so, and the doctor told me other things, but so we needed a doctor on here to talk about that. And he said something about girls. I didn't know here in America that we did anything
Ma'am, there's
young girls.
2 things I'd like to say about that. The first is that, and I don't fault any of us for this, it's very difficult when you live inside a society to see that society clearly, and so we tend to see circumcision as a very natural thing.
No, I
but
thought it was a cleanse.
it's really, if you've ever seen a baby actually have it done, you know it's painful, you know it hurts a lot.
I had 2 sons, I just said that.
And,
Yes.
And the second point is that, there's no medical justification for it whatsoever, and there's one simple answer to your hygiene concern: soap and water. Soap and water will do the trick.
Let's talk about how this procedure is done, Stephen. How is it done? Describe this to the audience. And to that caller, yes, we will have a doctor on. We're going to explore this subject extensively.
Okay.
Because we appreciate your call and the interest in this topic. Describe to us this particular procedure, Stephen.
Sure, there's a number
Thank
of
you. I'll
different...
take the rest of them off the air.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good.
There's a number of different procedures that are used. There's a board called a circumstraint that is sometimes used, which fixes the infant on the board in a position where he's powerless to move, so that the doctor can then violently, it is an act of violence, remove the foreskin without being bothered by the infant's natural screams and attempts to get free. There's another device called the Gomco clamp, which basically rips the foreskin from the glands, and it does have to be ripped because when a baby's born, the foreskin and the glands are attached together, which changes as they get older.
So you mean God essentially made the penis in this way for a purpose, I would imagine, to have the foreskin adhered, that is stuck to the gland, the head of the penis. Isn't that a very natural state?
Absolutely.
And what is the purpose of that?
Well, it serves a number of purposes, Charles. First of all, the foreskin protects the glands so that if dirt or other things threaten to come into the glands and make it uncomfortable and hurt it and abrade it, the foreskin is there to protect it. Secondly, it enhances sexual pleasure. It serves a number of very important functions.
Very good. Let's go to another caller here. Good evening. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
How are you doing tonight?
Very good. How you do, sir?
Okay. I wanted to know, you were speaking to a caller before last, and you had said more like about Jesus Christ in far as him not advocating violence.
Yes, not only not advocating violence, but he didn't advocate killing people. And specifically, he said turn the other cheek. Isn't that correct?
But there was a lot of things in the Bible that gave kind of mixed messages, and we read right as we speak today, as far as like he also said in the Ten Commandments, we should obey the law.
Well, the Tenth Commandment, of course, is in the Old Testament, right? But Jesus came in the New Testament after having studied extensively the Old Testament and brought a New Testament. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it's supposedly. I mean, sometimes, okay, a lot of people, when you're dealing with law, it seems like everybody goes back to, we have to obey the law, and we have to do this, and we have to do that. But, what do we do? It's in the law that if a man is found guilty and a jury of his peers find him guilty, and demand the death penalty, don't we pose a divide by the law?
Well, sir, it depends on whether the law is a just law. There was a law that said black people were chattel. They had no rights. Do you think that was a just law?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's all correct. I'm just wondering sometime we get mixed up sometime with the law and the Bible, and sometimes the law and the Bible can get mixed up. Laws can be erased, but the Bible can't.
Well, that's true. So do you believe that we should have a death penalty?
If it was more on an even playing field, I would recommend it. But right now, I don't, because it's biased right now. So
I see.
I don't.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your call, sir. Good evening, legally speaking.
Yes, sir. How you doing, you and your guests?
Very good, sir. How you doing?
All right. First, God said in the Bible, each child should be circumcised, I think, within the first 8 days. So before you bring the doctor on, I think you should consult with ministers, and they can give you more input on that situation. And another thing, I don't believe in killing nobody, because God said, thou should not kill. That means individual as well as collectively, as well as war.
Very good, sir. You brought up a good point. Stephen, the caller brought up a good point. He's talking about the admonition that apparently God gives to Abraham in Genesis to circumcise the son on the 8th day, and that's what the Jews believe. What is your comment to this caller's question?
Well, it's an interesting point. First of all, the circumcision that was actually done by the Jews following the Bible is a very different procedure than what's done today. It was a very minimal operation. It just involved removing the tip of the foreskin, the very tip, which I still don't condone, but it's an entirely different procedure than the one that's done today. So if we really want to follow the Bible, we'd be much better off not circumcising, which would be much closer to what this injunction that God gave was, if you believe in that, rather than going ahead and doing the very extensive operation that's done today.
Yeah, and thinking about the Bible, listen, Paul said it didn't really matter whether you circumcised or not. It was just a matter of whether you believed in God. Over in the New Testament, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So there is an argument, a very clear message in Paul's writings in the New Testament that you don't have to circumcise. Again, much like the other caller talked about the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth in the Old Testament, there's a New Testament that revised the teachings that we are familiar with in the Old Testament. Is that your understanding?
That's right, and in fact, Jews today are now more and more starting to question this operation, starting to develop structures such as mohels who perform breed lots, the rite that they have when the baby boy is born, which does not involve circumcision. So things are starting to change in that community as well.
So what are the benefits that the medical community give us about circumcision? In fact, you can hold that question. We will come back to it. I'd like you to give us a list of the so-called benefits to circumcision and tell us whether or not those are indeed benefits or not. Again, we welcome your calls. We are having a very exciting program tonight. We have had some very interesting calls, and we want more calls. Talk to us about anything you'd like to talk to us about. 209, the so-called Civil Rights Initiative, which will eliminate affirmative action in California, is a hot topic. There was a major demonstration at a state college yesterday where David Duke, the ex-KKK Grand Wizard, spoke. So those are some of the topics, and we'd like for you to come back with your calls. Stay tuned, don't touch the clicker, and we'll be right back.
Sometimes a fella's got to listen to his gut. Mine was telling me it was time for a change. So I paid a visit to the hat guys. The two Jakes running the joint said that sometimes the right hat is all it takes. I wanted to believe them. The place was loaded with lids of every style. Stetsons, Dobbs, Borsalinos, Kangol, and plenty of hats for the fairer sex, too. The two Jakes told me I chose the right hat. My gut told me they were right.
30% off all straw hats at the Hat Guy, 1764 Broadway, Oakland.
Studio 5.
Studio 5.
If you want your hair to be becoming, then you should be coming to Studio 5 Hair Design, a full-service salon that can awaken your body and mind. Studio 5 Hair Design offers complete hair and nail care. Being a full-service salon, you can select from an array of fine fashions, jewelry, and universal finery featured by Aquarius Rising, while being adorned with the latest hairstyles. If you want the total look for all occasions, come to Studio 5, located at 1759 Alcatraz in Berkeley. Call us soon at 428-1351 for your complete fashion rejuvenation. Studio 5 Hair Design, your one-stop shop for your hair, nail, and fashion needs.
Studio 5.
Studio 5.
Coliseum Family Cinema is finally open. Formerly, the Eastmont Mall Theaters is across from Svoboda Television Center, lower level Eastmont Mall at 73rd and Bancroft in Oakland. We're here to offer you Hollywood's finest films for our community. We have the lowest prices in town. $3 admission for adults and $2 for seniors and children under 12. Our concession stand is the best. And we have the friendliest and courteous service in our communities to serve you.
It's the Black Cowboy Parade, Saturday, October 5th at 10 a.m. at 14th and Broadway in downtown Oakland. The Black Cowboy Parade. You be there and see all of the bands, the floats, the marching groups. Oh, you'll have yourself a ball. Come on out. Saturday, October the 5th, Black Cowboy Parade.
Kind of brought the crowd to life. Here we are right back at Tea Cakes, everybody, where you can have all the fun in the world. And we've got the main man with us, TK, Mr. Tea Cakes himself. How's it going, TK?
Everything cool, Al. How you doing?
All right, Tea Cakes, we just want to find out some of the things that's happening here at the Tea Cakes Club. First of all, where are you located?
4318 Martin Luther King, Oakland. When you come down to Tea Cake, we have pool, darts. We also have a California lottery here. We play big wids. We look at sports, all the baseball games, football, basketball. Come on down and try it. Take a look.
If you'd like to be a member of the dart team, come down, sign up, whatever, and see if you could be a member of the Tea Cakes dart team. What a team! Yay! They have fun every night of the week. Yeah, right here. And that's Tea Cakes, 4318 Martin Luther King Jr. Way in Oakland, California. Come on down, y'all. Come on down. Come on down.
Just for Kids and Kicking It put in their sources together to make the Superstore. The Superstore is the home of Nike, Fila, Adidas, Guess, Levi's, Oshkosh, and the school uniforms. And we have a 27,000 feet shopping spree. The prices are so low that you cannot believe them. Nike, Fila, Adidas for men, kids, and ladies as low as $49.99 for 2 pairs. Selected styles only. Selected Guess and Levi jeans from $9.99. Hot Nike, Fila jackets, t-shirts, pants, sweatsuits at a 20 to 40% off retail price. School uniforms by French Toast at wholesale prices, nothing over $10. Pants, shorts, skirts, jumpers, $9.99, and any top 3 for $20. We're at MacArthur Broadway Shopping Center and save big. Don't forget, the parking is free. We're also at Eastmont Mall, Oakland, Bayfair Malls, and the great mall in Antioch. That's the Superstore, just for kids kicking it, MB Mall.
1976, George Cisneros had a stroke. 1990, Stanley Monroe had a stroke. 1982, George Vavilas had a stroke. But stroke didn't mark the end of their lives or their lifestyles. Find out the warning signs of stroke from your American Heart Association. Because the sooner your symptoms are recognized and treated, the faster you'll get back into the swing of things.
Welcome back to Legally Speaking, the John Burris Show. Again, my name is Charles Bonner, and I'm the guest host for John tonight. And with me is Stephen Svoboda, who is an attorney. And we've been talking about a number of issues, circumcision. We've been talking about the death penalty. We've been also briefly discussing Proposition 209, the so-called Civil Rights Initiative. There are a couple of other initiatives on the ballot that I will mention. One is Proposition 213. 213 will deny any and all damages to a convicted felon who is injured during the course of committing a felony. For example, you may remember a few years back, a man snatched a purse of a woman, and a cab driver chased the man, ran his cab into the man and pinned him up against a wall, breaking his leg and causing some other very serious injuries. The cab driver, rather the purse snatcher, sued the cab driver successfully. The jury awarded the purse snatcher money. This particular law, 213, will preclude that kind of recovery by that kind of criminal. But that's not all that 213 will do. 213 will also deny what is called non-economic damages, that is pain and suffering, human damages for human misery, to a drunk driver, even if the drunk driver did not cause an accident. For example, if a drunk driver is sitting legally at a traffic light waiting for the light to turn green in his direction of travel, and someone else runs into him, if he's found to have a blood alcohol level of over 0.08, which is the legal limit for alcohol, and therefore he'll be considered a drunk driver, he will not be able to cover any pain and suffering damages, no matter how extensive his damages are. Likewise, Proposition 213 will deny non-economic damages to an uninsured motorist. I hosted this show a couple of weeks ago, and I used an example of a mother who is driving her child to school, and she's, again, say, sitting at the traffic light waiting for the light to turn green in her direction, and she's hit through no fault of her own, but she has no insurance. This particular proposition will deny her any damages whatsoever. Stephen, is that a fair law to you? Is this particular Proposition 13, and who will benefit by such a law? Will the insurance companies be the ultimate beneficiaries of this kind of a proposition should this law pass?
Well, they certainly will, Charles, and it's a very disturbing law because it furthers our demonization in this society of certain groups, of our decision that drunk drivers must be punished even if they weren't at fault in a particular situation. People who are uninsured motorists who may be uninsured simply because they don't have the funds at that particular time to get insurance, they may very much want to get it. And I'm not encouraging it, I'm not condoning it, but I'm saying, are we going to prevent these people from their rightful recoveries in cases?
Yes.
I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's go to some callers here. Good evening, Legally Speaking.
Hi, I'd like to address turn my TV down. I'd like to address the issue of the death penalty.
Very good.
It's my understanding, I've read and heard from various sources that it costs the state more to implement the death penalty than it does to keep a person in prison for life. Is that
Yes.
true?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, that's one reason why I'm against it. Now, the other reason I understand that the states that does implement the death penalty have a higher murder rate than the states that do not implement the death penalty.
Yes, in other words, you're saying it doesn't appear to be a deterrent.
Doesn't appear to be a deterrent.
Yes, that is
okay,
correct.
that's my second reason. My third reason is that, and you alluded to this fact earlier, that historically speaking, the death penalty had really, blacks have borne the brunt of it more than any other race in terms of, let's say, disproportionately.
Absolutely.
You know, blacks have borne the brunt disproportionately, and I don't think it's really, the system hasn't been fair to a lot of blacks that are on trial, or poor people who have been on trial. So that's my third reason. I guess they're the only three reasons. I guess what I'm trying to bring out is this country has laws established with on the principles of separation of church and state.
Yes.
And for good reason. And, you know, if historically speaking, in Europe, there's been problems with church and state ruling, and the United States wanted to get away from that. So that's one reason why I have a problem with bringing up Bible issues and comparing them with laws, you know, civil laws of the land.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much for your call. We hear you.
Okay.
Stephen, you have any comments on that caller's comments? Do you have any?
Well, I think his points are well taken, and I think that there is a strong tendency to want to find the person to blame for a lot of the frustrations we have in life, and if we take these rights away from this group of people, then maybe we'll feel better.
Yeah.
As far as capital punishment goes, it doesn't work, as we've seen. It doesn't work as deterrent. It's applied vastly more against people of color than against white people. That isn't fair.
Yes.
It should not be continuing.
Thank you very much. Let's go to another caller. Good evening, legally speaking.
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
I have a couple issues I'd like to talk to you about. First of all, is that it's my understanding that circumcision has been pretty much taken off of stuff like Blue Cross.
That is correct. Well, Blue Cross hasn't, but Medicare no longer funds circumcisions, and many of the insurance companies now are not funding it because, again, there's no medical benefit to it, and many of the insurance companies' charters say they can't fund procedures where there's no medical benefit. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's the very interesting thing about it, is that there is not a medical benefit for it. It's the only procedure of which we can say that, and so gradually insurers are catching on to that, and it's my understanding that some of the people who oppose this are actually pointing that out to insurers and saying this is without reason.
Well, isn't, in fact, it possible that this is kind of like a cash cow, you know, in terms of the procedure being something that doctors make money on?
$500 million a year.
And do, in fact, parents really get advised that it's unnecessary and there's really no reason for them to pay for something like that?
I think you've really hit the nail on the head, ma'am. Thank you for your call, and we'll address your questions right now.
Thank you.
Stephen, is this a cash cow, as the caller just said? How much money is made off circumcising boys every day in this country in a year's time?
Well, Charles, the minimum estimate is $300 million, but I think more accurately it's about $500 million a year that's made off this industry. And the caller did hit it right on the head, because what's happening is doctors are not fully informing their patients. If they were, most patients would not be having the procedure, and they know that. So they conveniently leave out the information, the full information that's needed to make an accurate decision.
Yes. Very good. Let's go to another caller. Good evening. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Yes, good evening to both of you.
Yes.
Good evening. The previous male caller covered most of the bases. Now, the circumcision was a Jewish law, and Christ himself was circumcised on the 8th day and was raised as a Jewish custom. But later in his ministry, he let us know that he didn't come to abolish or destroy any laws. He came to fulfill the laws. And in fulfilling the law, he was able to do what the laws couldn't do. And as to the death penalty, Christ took a coin and asked for whose inscription was on it. And they say Caesar. He said, that which is Caesar's render unto Caesar, and that which is God render unto God. So Caesar was the result of him hanging on Calvary. So if you want to know anything about the death penalty, you can ask the two men on either side of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the call. Stephen, do you have any comments on that caller's question? Comments?
I'm not sure that I totally followed exactly what he was getting at.
Yeah, well, what Jesus did say when he was hanging there on Mount Calvary is, God, please forgive them because they know not what they're doing, right? So it appears that Jesus was still preaching the method of forgiveness rather than vengeance, and I think somewhere in the caller's message, that message is there. Good evening. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Yes, Mr. Bonner, I'd like to know what your guest feels about the CCRI.
Okay, very good. What do you feel about Proposition 209, Stephen, the so-called California Civil Rights Initiative?
Well, I feel that it's a very complex issue, and I feel that we don't want to go ahead with this Proposition 209 because it will take away a lot of rights that have been achieved through a lot of hard struggle, and I think it's a misconceived idea.
Yes.
Okay, but I think it may be misconceived in terms of affirmative action versus preferential treatment. So, Mr. Bonner, can you please tell me what your feelings are about this initiative?
Well, my feelings about the initiative is that it is a ploy among those people who have had preferential treatment for the 200 years that this country has been in existence. When you talk about racial preference, the fact still is that 99% of all the managers in this country are white males. So I can't imagine that the white males who put this initiative on the ballot all of a sudden want to claim that race should not be...
I don't think a white male, but I think there were just a couple of white males that had received discrimination in terms of applying for a job, and I think that's what brought on the initiative. But you know, I have real concerns about the rhetoric that's behind it, and as black people, why we need to continue to depend on preferential treatment, not affirmative action.
Yes, I understand.
Preferential treatment.
I understand. We don't need preferential treatment. If
no, we're as good as everybody else.
Absolutely, and that is not what affirmative action is about. Again, affirmative action...
Well, we know what affirmative action is about. What's preferential treatment about?
Right. Well, there's preferential treatment is not the law and has never been. Preferential treatment is a buzzword that those people who are in favor of Proposition 209 are using to sort of scare people to vote this out. No one gets preferential treatment. For example, I went to law school. I still had to pass the bar. Before I became a lawyer. It had nothing to do with preferential treatment. And every black person who has a job doing whatever he or she is doing still had to do it on his or her own merit. So preferential treatment... Or better. Yeah, exactly. That is not the buzzword. We're talking about really an equal opportunity. We'd want equal access to contracts, equal access to televisions, for example. I mean, this station perhaps is only one a black station in this country. The reality is that contracts are made on the golf courses. They're made, these kinds of alliances are made in the steam rooms, and many people of color do not have access to this kind of opportunity. And without some kind of, to use Lyndon Baines Johnson's words, affirmative action, and of course that's where that term came from, is when President Johnson used it in an executive order in 1965, until the law had some teeth in it to make sure that women and minorities were able to get government contracts, we still had a system of apartheid in this country, even though we had civil rights laws dating back to 1871. So this so-called civil rights initiative is a sham, and it is to maintain a system of preferential treatment for the people who are now in power, namely white males. That's my feeling. So the reason why I feel so strongly about that is because if you look at this initiative, there's a Clause C, which is going to change the standard of sexual discrimination for women. So you voters really need to look closely at this initiative. This initiative is a sham, is going to take away rights rather than giving you rights. There is no preferential treatment based on race now. That is against the law. The law right now is evenly balanced, and the so-called affirmative action law only gives people who've been historically excluded an opportunity to participate. So that's my feeling, ma'am. Thank you for your call.
You're welcome.
Good evening, legally speaking. Good evening, legally speaking.
Yes, here was a little article. When did Governor Wilson sign this law into action? Drug dealers could face civil suit, and it will take effect January the 1st. It was inspired by Carl O'Connor's son, who had a drug problem. Under the law, dealers who are found to have caused damage or injury by selling drugs can be sued by family members, employers, medical facilities, insurers, and victims of user reckless action.
Yes.
Drug users who could sue their dealers, but only to recover economic damage and lawyers' fees. People who believe they were injured while still in the womb can also sue. What about the supplier?
Well,
take my answer out there, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for calling. Stephen, you have any comments to that caller's question? I've seen that particular article, this new law, where people who are victimized by drug dealing can sue the drug dealers. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, no real strong comments, just that it seems like a good idea to me. I don't see any reason why people shouldn't be entitled to claim the damages that were caused by that.
Absolutely. I think people are being victimized by drug dealers all over this country, and certainly if this law will give us a remedy, us victims a remedy, I'm all in favor of it.
Absolutely.
Let's see, we don't have a call coming in right now. There was a new law also passed outlawing female genital mutilation, I believe, just recently. Is that correct?
That's right. It was signed by Governor Wilson yesterday.
And tell us a bit about that. What will that do?
Well, female genital mutilation of any minor is now a felony, and it's punishable under the laws of the state of California as a felony. So if you're an adult and due to custom, your personal belief, whatever, you participate in the mutilation of a female, clitorectomy, the different procedures we talked about, you've committed a felony.
Yeah. Now, this law was brought about because there was a young African woman, 18-year-old woman, as I recall, who came over from Togo and didn't want to go back home because she was afraid of this female circumcision. And after this country kept her in jail for 18 months, they ultimately gave her political asylum. And her cause then gave rise to both a federal law and several state laws on this issue. Is that correct?
That's right. There's been a number of states recently that have passed laws on this issue, most of them in 1996. I've tabulated them. I believe there's about 9 states that have passed laws and another 3 or 4 that have laws pending. So there's been quite a lot of activity on this issue.
Well, now, does that then raise a question of denial of equal protection for boys? If they're saying you can't circumcise girls, and the 14th Amendment says that we have equal protection under the law, are boys then being treated differently now from girls?
I think it does raise questions of equal protection. In fact, a lawsuit has been filed in North Dakota based on that exact claim against the North Dakota law. North Dakota is one of the states that passed one of these laws. It's interesting to look at the laws because some of them or at least one of them specifically exempts circumcision, and you ask yourself, well, why do they need to do that? Why can't they just pass a law that covers everything?
Yes. Do you know anyone who's contemplating any lawsuit in this state on the basis of denial of equal protection on behalf of boys?
Yes, Charles. Well, I believe that your office is considering getting involved in that, and I would like to participate in that as well if that comes to pass.
Sure. Very good. We will certainly explore that. Again, good evening. Welcome to Legally Speaking.
Good evening. First of all, let me apologize for the routine question that I'm going to ask. But as a homeowner in Oakland, it's a great annoyance to me. So,
can you keep your voice up a bit, sir? We can't hear you too well.
Thank you. Is there a pooper-scooper law in Oakland, and what does that law require, and what are my rights as a homeowner who's dealing with this problem from neighbors, of course,
yes,
but not being sensitive?
Frankly, I don't know if there's a pooper-scooper law in Oakland. I know there is one in San Francisco. Do you know, Stephen?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think there's one in Berkeley, but I don't know in Oakland.
Yes. There's a member here in the studio who's nodding affirmatively, saying that there is. So we'll look into that for you, sir. You may call back, and we'll try to get that answer for you, okay? Thanks for the call. Good evening, Legally Speaking. Good evening, Legally Speaking.
Yes, here's the one since the line was open. Drugs unleashed.
Would you please turn your radio down, sir?
Drugs unleashed on schools to track student drugs. Drug-sniffing canines will train their nose on students' lockers, backpacks, and common areas during the unannounced visit to high schools and middle schools and 14 most of the rural school districts in El Dorado. The dogs will visit each high school at least twice per month and every middle school at least once a month. What do you think about that law?
You have any comments on that caller's question, Stephen?
Well, I think it's a tricky issue. I mean, I think that you certainly want to do what you can to keep drugs out of schools, and that's a very important issue, but you also want to avoid police mentality and having young children having to be interrogated. So I think it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, I agree with you. Someplace in there is a delicate balance. We have to control the drugs because the drugs, of course, are leading to a lot of violence. Well, we appreciate you being with us tonight. We've had fun, and we talking to you, and we welcome you back to this program. Keep yourselves informed, get yourself a constitution, and defend your rights. Thank you, and come back again to Legally Speaking. Thank you. Good night.